Hello and welcome to Florida Politics Now. I am joined by Jim DeLaw at WWSB and Allison Baker at WJHG, a little smaller group than normal this week. It's what happens when we get into summertime and everyone takes off. But we're talking all things Florida politics. This week, the governor signed a controversial bill that now allows the state to designate groups as terrorist organizations. So let's take a look.
Be able to enforce a religious or foreign law. Governor Ron DeSantis signed the bill aimed at preventing the Islamic code of law known as Sharia law in Florida courts during a news conference Monday.
We have some problems in this country, more than we should, with international terrorism.
The new law also allows the state's chief of domestic security to designate a domestic or foreign terrorist organization. Governor and the cabinet would then have to sign off. DeSantis already named the Council on American Islamic Relations and the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations in an executive order in December.
We've been very strong in Florida from the beginning on all of this nonsense and doing whatever we can to keep the people of this state safe.
CARE says in a statement that the new law is an expanded and deeply flawed framework that can attack any organization that dares to dissent.
The point is to make people afraid to talk about certain things and shut out dissenting speech altogether.
The law also bans schools from spending state or federal money to support or promote designated terrorist organizations. The Florida chapter of PEN America's Sophia Brown says this is another way to limit free speech.
We foresee that this will make teachers, faculty, and students scared to cross this unclear line, again, because what it means to support or promote such an organization is defined only sometimes.
A federal judge issued an injunction on the executive order back in March. The law takes effect July 1st. In Tallahassee, I'm Cody Butler reporting.
And the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is already kind of getting ready for this. They are already looking at really codifying that executive order with CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, Cody, I've only lived in Florida for about 25 years, and I can't remember a whole lot of stories about us having to deal with domestic terrorism. Is this, I would just suspect the Democratic Party is saying this is a solution in search of a problem. Have you heard that in Tallahassee?
Yeah, that's what they were saying when they were voting on this. It was down party lines when this bill passed. And CARE says that it's basically just Islamophobia. They've had press conferences at the Capitol. They've had to kind of sneak around. They wouldn't say exactly where they were going to be because they were afraid of what would happen if people found out, like the governor's office found out that they were in the Capitol when they were designated as a terror group by executive order. So it's really something that just the governor decided that he wanted in an executive order and the legislature put into law.
And do you think that they're going to the group is going to try to file something in court to fight this?
I expect that there will be court challenges. Several groups have come out against this, saying it limits free speech, and it's mostly basically if you don't agree with us, then we'll come after you, basically. And so they are saying that it's unconstitutional, and it's more than just religious groups that are saying this. It's definitely expecting some court challenges, like most of the laws that come out of the legislature.
I haven't read the entire bill, but is there a way, a form of redress if a group gets characterized by the governor's office as a terrorist group? And is there any way for them to protest or, file hey, we're not a terrorist group?
It does limit the due process in this. That's another reason why people think that it's unconstitutional, because basically the state just tells the organization, we deem you as a terrorist group. It doesn't have to explain why we deem you as a terrorist group. And so because there was a public records exemption that went with this. And so those records aren't going to be public. So the state will designate it because the chief, the person in charge of this is the FDLE commissioner. And then he'll go to the cabinet and say, I think that these people need to be a terrorist group. And then the cabinet will say yes. And then they're deemed a terrorist group. And so, in the eyes of the state. And so there's no real, with the public records exemption, no one's going to know why. And so there's no way to say, no, this isn't true or anything like that. And so I do expect that also to be a part of the court challenges.
And Cody, are you hearing anything on the federal level about this? Any response from Congress members?
No. Normally, this is something that is left up to the federal government, the Department of State, and the cabinet up there designates terrorist groups on the national level. I've not seen it happen on a state level, so in that respect, this is unusual. But there's already steps in place at the federal level to designate this as a terror group. We definitely saw this in the early 2000s with Al Qaeda and ICE and things like that, as we were fighting in the Middle East at that time. And so I see this as potentially stepping on the federal government's toes. But again, the courts will ultimately decide on this one.
That is the one.
Yeah, you haven't heard about any other states doing something like this, have you?
And no, this is another Florida first. So it's definitely something I've not seen any state even attempt at this point either.
But do you think with Florida being one of the first to do this, that potentially other states could follow, or if it ends up in the courts, it might set the tone in the future?
Possibly. We do see a lot of states like to follow each other. Some issues, some states like to be first, and other issues they play the wait and see game. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how other states end up responding to this. Well, welcome back to Florida Politics Now. We do know officially that lawmakers still don't have a budget, so the next time they'll be in town will be in about 2 weeks to talk about congressional redistricting. But right now, the court case that the state has said they need, the Supreme Court still hasn't been ruled on, but Governor DeSantis says that they could still go ahead with a congressional redistricting anyways. Let's take a look.
before the Supreme Court rules on the Louisiana voting rights case.
I think that's appropriate whether the decision comes before we do it or after.
Governor Ron DeSantis continues to make his case to redraw congressional boundaries before the midterms. His special session order cites a Supreme Court case out of Louisiana dealing with the Voting Rights Act.
I also think we know how that Supreme Court case is going to come out at this point. I don't think there's much of a dispute about that, and I think Justice Alito's writing in the opinion.
Senate President Ben Albriton's office says he still agrees with his memos to his senators in January that they should wait until they get more guidance from the Supreme Court. U.S. House districts are typically redrawn once a decade immediately after a census. Florida has a constitutional amendment banning political gerrymandering. Many states are going into the midterms with new boundaries after President Donald Trump asked to keep more Republicans in Congress.
Republicans nationwide have been scrambling to redraw our maps and rewrite the rules to defend their slim majority in Congress, redistricting in red states and trying to trick voters off the rolls with the SAVE Act.
Voters agree. A recent Emerson College poll shows the majority of voters think this is a bad idea.
The timing could not, frankly, be worse to have this special session.
The information lawmakers would use to draw new maps would be the same as the current maps drawn in 2022. Political analyst Susan McManus says there's still a lot of uncertainty ahead of the special session.
There's so many balls in the air right now, and you can bet that a lot of them have been looking at maps or thinking about how maps be drawn, what lawsuits could happen.
This special session will begin on April 20th. In Tallahassee, I'm Cody Butler reporting.
And we still don't know if they actually will be passing a map or if they're just going to gavel in and gavel out. We just know that they have to show up on April 20th.
Cody, the Louisiana case really has much to do with opponents are saying that it's racial, that it's based on racial lines rather than political lines. Here, even like Hakeem Jeffries was even saying that this is a bad idea and it could backfire on Republicans by putting more seats in play than would normally be the case. Have you heard any fear from Republicans that could be the case?
Yeah, I mean, hearing especially some Republican congressmen down in the Miami area particularly, they are concerned because South Florida is the area that's going to get divvied up more than any other area in the state just by sheer numbers and kind of options to redraw. There are a few more minority performing districts down in South Florida, and so they might kind of break that up because they kind of made sure that they were performing well in those districts when they were drawing the map. And so they're going to adjust for that if they do anything. But Republicans are definitely worried that this could backfire. We've seen other states attempt this. Indiana comes to mind, where the Republican supermajority rejected redistricting there. And so this is a wildly unpopular thing. And as Democrats gain momentum during these special elections, Republicans are concerned that this could backfire because this would be another reason to vote for a Democrat in the elections coming up.
And Cody, they could do it, they could not do it. You mentioned they could gavel in and just gavel out and not even do anything in the session. But with that case being in the court system, if they potentially do anything, could that all get thrown out?
Yeah, the governor was saying we know that the Supreme Court's going to strike this down, but I also saw one of the justices say it's kind of bad when AI is predicting accurately what we're going to do. So that tells you that even justices are worried about the fact that people are able to predict so accurately some of the rulings are going to be. But it's definitely something that will likely be challenged. They're looking at possibilities, but so it's just interesting that we are going forward with this when the reason for it hasn't happened yet, because we have that constitutional amendment. So we can't say it's because of Donald Trump, even though people in the political world know that's the real reason behind it.
And if they do just gavel in and gavel out, we still don't have a budget. So when is that going to happen?
No idea. This special session was called for before regular session, so they can only work on redistricting during this special session. So we don't know. We know it's going to be after the week of the April 20th. So we'll wait and see. Last year they didn't have it until late June, or mid-June. So we'll have to wait and see. But it sounds like someone's holding the line, and it's likely Speaker Perez is holding the line on the budget negotiations right now, because the tones that on their memos that were sent to senators at the same time, the only thing they can agree on at this point is the time they're sending an email. But tones were very different. Senate was more optimistic, they were making progress, and Speaker Perez's memo was just like, anything you heard about us coming back next week isn't true. So it's definitely still a lot of fighting behind closed doors right now.
And is Florida on a fiscal year? Does it start like in September, or is it calendar year, or how long do they have to diddle around with this until they really need to sit down and crunch some numbers?
Yeah, the fiscal year begins July 1st. So they have until midnight, June 30th to get this passed. And we've come close a few times in the past over the last few decades, we'll say. But I don't think we've actually had a government shutdown any time in recent memory. But it's definitely a possibility. But I know when Rick Scott was governor that he was putting a plan in place for if they didn't have a budget in place by July 1st, but they're hoping that they'll still get it done by July 1st this year.
And I know last year, I mean, we were all waiting right up until almost the last minute too. So really it's those same differences we were having. Is anybody trying to talk to each other, or do you think they'll wait again later to have another special session? What do you think is going to happen?
It depends on who you ask, because we always get different answers every time we ask someone. Before session ended, Perez said that he wasn't flexible on spending more money. He's worried about the fiscal outlook over the next few years, because right now the projections are the state will be taking in less money. And so he's trying to set future legislatures up so that they don't have to increase taxes. So he's trying to make as many cuts as he can now, and increasing the rainy day fund and things like that. So that's definitely what's kind of the main sticking point. The Senate still has some of their projects and their policy issues that they want funded. So we'll see kind of what they end up coming up with, but it sounds like there's still more than $1 billion apart.
And the longer they wait, well, the harder it's going to be for us to cover, because it's going to happen so quickly, and it's going to be hard for people to really get a look at what the legislators are passing, because things are going to go so quickly. So that was going to make it tough on a lot of people.
And yeah, the budget process procedurally is about 2 weeks, because that chambers, since it is a special session, the old budget died. So they have to pass their respective budgets and then go into conference and then go back and forth in the conferences and then pass the same budget. But before you can even pass the budget, there's the cooling off period. So that's like 3 days in itself. So you can't get this done in 1 week. So there's a little bit of time that they'll have to do just to get the procedure steps in to get this done on time. All right, and that's all the time we have for this edition of Florida Politics Now. We'll see you again next week.